So some pretty crazy stuff is going on over in France. I know that with a lot of these news topic videos that I do, they typically kind of are restricted to the United States or maybe Canada or something like that. But this is an instance in which I think that it's very important to cover a situation that's happening in another westernized country like France, because seeing this happen is absolutely insane. I mean, the more that I read into this, the more that I actually do understand the fears and the frustrations that the French people are having right now. Because I live in the United States, right? Our culture is all based around this whole concept of freedom and liberty and justice for all and whatnot. Whether or not we do that perfectly, completely debatable, obviously, but you see a situation like this, and when you're looking at it from the outside, you're just stunned, right? Because you can see the fear, right? Like, you can see why people would be worried about this, but then there's people in that place that don't even really understand what's going on, or they don't understand the full context of what's happening. I'm sure that's how the rest of the world looks at us sometimes. I mean, we definitely have had our year with the police and whatnot here in the United States, but that's kind of what this video is about, because there is a very controversial new security bill in France that has been proposed that would definitely, I would say, raise some concerns. More people need to be aware about this, and then also there's been a lot of protests that have been staged in response to this potential security bill. So I kind of just want to cover all this real quick and let you guys know what's going on, because I know a lot of you, you comment or you tell me on Twitter that, like, a lot of the times, especially in situations like this, my channel is the only place that you guys get information on a lot of global events, which I wouldn't say is a good thing, but I definitely appreciate that support. So basically, a bill was passed on Tuesday, and this is last Tuesday, because obviously, well, today is Tuesday. But a bill was passed last Tuesday that people say could make it harder for journalists and human rights advocates to hold French police accountable. Now, the Global Security Bill's most controversial section, Article 24, which was approved by lawmakers on that following Friday, forbids the publication of images that allow the identification of a law enforcement officer, quote, with the intent to cause them harm, physically or mentally. Now, according to CNN, the bill, which had been the subject of much criticism and protests, was amended by the government to ensure the freedom of press. The bill has been passed by the National Assembly, which means that it will head to the French Senate in December to be voted on once again. Prime Minister Jean Castex said that the new law should not, quote, prejudice the legitimate interest of the public to be informed. Now, on French television, it was said that the amendment was basically a step in the right direction, but warned that in the legislative arsenal, there was already the possibility to punish anyone who uses in an ill-intentioned way the videos that they published. Now, the reason that this is so controversial, it really comes down to that identification of police officers in ill will or whatever, right? Because as an American, we've watched countless protests against the police this year. And we've seen so many videos and photographs and things like that from these protests that have helped document what happened at them, both on the police side and, of course, on the protesters' side. And that was very important, right? It's very important that the police can be held accountable in a way like this by the public. The reason that a lot of people are fearful for this new security bill is the concern of abuse of that wording, right? Because if you think about it, let's say there's a protest going on. There's clashes between the police and the protesters and whatnot, right? And someone captures a video of a cop beating an unarmed protester in the streets, right? Well, like here in the United States, for the most part, is legal to record public servants, right? Police officers included. It's like during a traffic stop, there's been videos I've seen where cops will be like, hey, turn that camera off. It's illegal to film me during a traffic stop. That's not true. You fully have the right to record public servants when they're in their active duty. So with that being said, it could be used with that wording, and people could make it out to say like, oh, it was ill intent behind that recording of that police officer beating that person, right? And hypothetically, people who record things like that, who are trying to hold the police accountable, who are trying to document what's happening at protests, who are essentially capturing history, could potentially be punished for doing so, which in turn could make people more fearful of recording police and in their interactions, I guess, which means less responsibility for the police. Now, it is important that police are held accountable for what they're doing, right? They're public servants. They hold a lot of power in society. If you can't record the actions that they do, that definitely raises a lot of concern to someone like me. And apparently tens of thousands of French also agree with the notion that that is not a good precedent to set, because there were massive protests. Overall, the Global Security Bill would expand the ability of security forces to film ordinary citizens without their consent through police body cams and drones. and would also restrict the publication of photos or videos of police officers' faces because they can be used to identify them. So basically speaking, this security bill allows the police to mass survey the population, right? They can go out in public, they can record ordinary citizens doing their daily interactions, even if they're not committing crimes, right? Because usually body cams are supposed to always be on. There's been situations, at least here in the United States, where that wasn't the case. And of course, drones that fly around and monitor crime and things like that, they're going to be recording and seeing everything going on from above. So basically, this is more like a mass surveillance concern to me. We're talking about the police with identifiable footage of civilians, but yet they're not allowed to film the police back. I think you can kind of see the difference there, what can be concerning about that whole situation, so... Now, Amnesty International said that if the bill becomes law in its current form, France, which is one of the first countries in the world to proclaim the concept of universal human rights, they claim that they'll become an exception among democracies. The president of Amnesty International France said, quote, "On one hand, citizens are asked to accept the possibility of being filmed under the pretext that they have nothing to fear if they've done nothing wrong. And at the same time, the police refuse to be filmed, which is a right in every democracy in the world." Now think about that concern, right? Of course, you ask civilians to be filmed, and you tell people things like, well, if you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to hide. Why do you mind being filmed? Which, by the way, is a very stupid argument. I'm going to describe that here very soon, right? So why doesn't that same notion apply to the police? You know what I'm saying? Why does that same notion not apply to the government? If the cops aren't doing anything wrong, why would they mind a civilian filming them? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're just using their logic, right? So I hate that logic, though. If you have nothing to hide, you wouldn't mind this. There's plenty of other concerns that you can have about the police mass recording the population than just the, well, what if they catch me doing something bad? Just like the NSA, right? They monitor everything you do online, they tap your phones, everything, right? And it's all in the name of defense, right? Of security. But it's fucking creepy, right? It's terrifying. It's completely overbearing, right? They're breaking into your privacy. They're breaching your privacy of what you do, and you're told that if you have nothing to hide, you should not be worried. That's ridiculous, in my opinion. I don't want somebody going through, checking out the weird things I look at, you know what I'm saying? And none of you do either. But that's the mentality that these governments recently have been using in order to expand bills like this. Now, the bill's co-sponsor said, quote, "The broadcasting and capturing of images, whether by a camera or by citizens on a phone of policemen doing their job with their faces exposed, will still be possible. What will change is that any calls for violence or incitement of hatred that accompany such pictures will be sanctioned by the law." Now, this seems unnecessary to begin with, because in most instances, under the law, calls for incitement of violence against another person regardless is already against the law. So this law doesn't even necessarily need to expand on this point, right? Because, I mean, if I went out in public, right, and I was filming a cop, and I don't know, I look at my friend and I'm like, hey, shoot this motherfucker, right? That's a crime. They don't need to pass some security bill to say that if you do it to police, that's against the law. You can't do that to begin with. So what this really seems like to me is a way for the government to abuse the wording of a new law, right, in order to punish people or crack down on rights. And this is honestly why I love France, man, because the people there, they take no shit, and I love to see it, right? Here in the United States, it seems like, the country that's supposed to be the free beacon of the world where we don't take it from the government. That's why we all have guns, and we got our Bill of Rights, and we have the Constitution. We as Americans have to see something happen for 70 years before we even do anything, right? We have to see the government breach our rights to a point of just gross egregiousness to where it's legitimately dangerous before anyone even thinks of protesting. The French thought their gas prices were going to go up a little while ago, and the yellow vest movement broke out. Dude, they took no shit. And they're doing it again. There's mass protests that have been going on across France recently, and they're not taking it, man. They're not sitting down and taking this without saying something about it, and I wish that we as Americans would take concepts like this more seriously. When people like Edward Snowden have come out and basically shown us the things that the government does against us, people should have been in the streets. People should have been protesting. People should have taken it more seriously. And I'm glad that if anyone, the French have stepped up to do something about their own respective issues. So, with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. Thank you to my channel members. Your support helps my channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, not a fan of this bill whatsoever for the French, and signing out.